I'm honored to be here, but I'm not the primary technical person. Was Maureen Louis Touchie, who was our treaty technology and archival person. But I am the language coordinator and special education instructor right now, but have experienced not treaty work, but more language. And as I go through different language programs, I see the need for digitization of material. And I'd like to take this time to thank Mr. Lawson for the fine training we had in such a short time, such a huge amount of information, and which I could not be administrator and run back and forth and do technology. So thank goodness for Maureen, who is also a very busy grandmother, also helps with the program. And I think of issues that comes to the forefront. With language programs, I went to one independent school who wanted me to do a curriculum design for them, because about 6 or 7 linguists had come and given them material. No kidding, it was a cupboard from floor to ceiling with curriculum material, with language data, dictionaries, everything in the world but what they needed for scope and sequence for K to 6. And it was a huge enterprise. I said, it's straightforward. Tell me what you're teaching now and what you think might not be necessary to the teachers. And we just picked and choose and then got a curriculum, but they have an archive of their culture. And of course, culture, you can't have a language teacher teaching you without emphasizing some culture as well. So we still have in the Ucluelet government stacks of data that haven't been worked because we don't have a linguist on hand to work with that daily. So I worry about the stacks of my personal data from Ittatsoo First Nation, which involves language that I've done on scraps of paper and thrown in it's not put in anywhere, it's just in my stuff. And little notes about the culture here and there that elders tell you everywhere in all my books. It's a huge enterprise that I'm just now beginning to see the need for youth to come in and add the data to our piles and piles of what we have digitized to date. With the plans, the other issues, well, I must say that I was elated to see the partnership that the MOA understood as partnered with First Nations. I mean, a first. I went to the Museum of BC, where my ex-husband is a chief, and he had a curtain refurbished so the original can go to the States somewhere. And they'd asked him could he do his two-party, that was his right as a chief. And to me, that I had not seen the museum present a living culture before. I said, I just had a straightforward no. That's very spiritual material for your use, for our people. You cannot do that in that context. You use only welcome songs, not your own tupati. That isn't respectful. And he listened. He didn't explain, but that was my first encounter with institution as a place to save our culture but not to use it. And I applaud what MOA has done to actually bring our culture alive by the several displays I've seen. And this is giving proper respect to our culture's proper hopes that people who were subjected to residential school and government policies that made us lose a lot of who we are. But thank goodness there are some semblance of our culture kept throughout philology or linguistics and what have you. But I just wanted to make that note of appreciation of how I felt. I was given the opportunity to share the technology that is used in keeping our culture, to bring it to our community so that we can access the huge amount of data on a daily basis. Right now, the digital source are elders who have oral C as their memory for us, but they're going to be gone, and we won't be able to just say, how do you say that? What does that mean? Could you elaborate why it is named that? They won't be there. And I first began linguistic research with the grandfather, Charlie Jones in Port Renfrew. We have no more speakers now, but he was over 100, and I was able to record him with a cassette. And this man was my experience of oral C and history, and I didn't realize he was the last one that I'll ever hear do that. Hours and hours of stories, legends that lasted an hour, and it just never will happen unless we start doing our language historically and the way that it was done for teaching. I'm aware of how the cassettes eventually crack and come apart, because I had cassettes for many years and have now just retrieved material I did in the 70s from the University of Washington. I didn't go to University of Washington. I went to University of Victoria and UBC, but my data ended up in University of Washington because that's people who gave me a small grant to do my work. So my materials are in special collections, and thankfully through this program we were able to digitize my tapes that I did with D.T. Daw Nation, Makah Nation, and whoever else I happened to tape, and also the Ucluelet that I work for now. I work for a nation that is not my original dialect, but I am a semi-fluent learner all along because I'm teaching it. An important part of teaching the language, I discovered was a great acquisition tool. Through teaching a language, I learned and also make my students make them. There's a authoritative teacher. Their assignments are to help their spouse, to help their child, to teach their child. Another person is good with writing the IPA on the computer, so her assignment involves doing that. Another person is good with other computer features. Someone else may have picked up a digital app on their iPhone. So many different skills, so their assignments are dependent on where their areas of skill amounts to. And that's a realization of our small community, when it comes to teaching. I have one elder who speaks fluently, but because of residential school will not teach more than 2 people. But he's got a loud voice. I never had a loud voice. That's thankfully technology could help me with not getting tired teaching now. I wish I had that when I was a teacher in the schools. But yeah, he refuses to say, oh no, I'm not a teacher. He's got this fear of groups. He could never sit up here. He could never sit in a classroom. And so my years of instruction I did summer sessions for UVic as well, and taught language teachers. And the ability to observe, especially residential school, the fear of standing in a crowd. Sometimes I didn't see that, and it took a while to know that. The kind of thing of pathologies our people experience. I'm residential school, 12-year, and the kind of, I can't expect them to be a teacher, but I can digitally create material now that can be the teacher. It is such a relief. It just gives you hope. And I asked Maureen, what do you recall as your biggest strength when you began digitizing? She said, you can make things loud. The audio is possible. We can, when I recorded my grandfather and my grandmother years and years ago, and oh my God, there's dogs barking, there's crows outside, and all these noises, but I loved it. I liked that noise in there, but for an instructional one, we need to have the pronunciation as the primary object in the audio. But yeah, just the fact she felt that we can have better access rather than hoarding the one precious cassette at home. We can now have access to the vocabulary, to the songs, to the history involved with this language. Whereas before, it was difficult, and it was still difficult to get all the people to submit cassettes. They were sort of more like collections of specific persons, not maybe one tape here and there from some people who were so afraid to commit to give. So we tried to make copies first, so they kept their precious original. And, so I have a bad throat now from years and years of forcing my voice to be loud. I found that moving from old technology to new technology was, people my age like to see things in front of them. They like to see the tape rewinding, and I know what's there, that foot. But the new technology just zips. Oh my God. I have to keep track of the footage of this now more than ever. And you'll, it's very rare that the elders will even want to touch technology. We have one person that does the typing, and it's made her interested in doing what is it when you put the picture with the word? Pardon?
Power plant?
No. Anyway, we had assignments. Oh, okay. 1 minute left? Okay. Anyway, I can go on talking about the other students, but yeah, very difficult for myself as an instructor, as our language program stands vicariously with a few instructors, if you have a language coordinator, if you have a budget for it. But we continue and persevere, and our students begin to help, because you become a single person, the librarian, the principal, the instructor, the curriculum designer, everything that educational systems have whole departments involved with. And so a very tiring job, and I applaud that technology will help us to say, yes, I have a vocabulary for your camp trip right here, and it's at .001 camp by. That will be just so much. It means not filtering through files. I started when we did shoebox files with cards, in the 70s, and now that's so far gone. But I have students, first-time students do that. But yeah, a very grateful opportunity to help our students, especially the young people who I want to get involved with digitization, to import and export things to their CDs, to their DVDs, to their USBs, and transport and import everything as they please. Thank you very much.